And here with the brown snake eggs, this will be the last of the series of videos, probably until they hatch, and if I'm too busy I won't even be making a video then. Anyway, look, let's get back to these eggs. I just plucked them out of the incubator. I'll just show them to you. Now, it's only about 4 hours since we made the last lot of videos, and you can see the eggs have generally rehydrated. They look very good. Now, the humidity in the container is quite well gauged. I just felt the sides. There was a tiny bit of film of condensation down the bottom there, and that was basically it. The rest of the walls are basically dry. The top, as I touch it, feels dry. That is pretty much a perfect humidity level. In fact, you could even get away with a bit more humidity, but the perfect humidity in these sort of containers is just a little bit of condensation on a few sides, and that's it. It's one of those things where in theory you can't go beyond 100% humidity in here, but in the real world of incubating, yes, there is definitely oversaturation. These eggs look good. They all look absolutely immaculate. They're full. Now, I didn't mention it before, but I suppose I should. With venomous snake eggs, the issue is they're very small compared to python eggs, and when they're exposed to dry air, they can literally shrivel up in front of your very eyes. When they were laid and sitting in the cage, when I first encountered them, they were nice and rounded and they were fine. There was no evidence of shriveling whatsoever, and they had been laid for probably 2-3 days, and you could see that because I had very high humidity in the cage, saturated cage, the eggs maintained their integrity. As I was separating them, ready for the incubator, you could see, in the dry air, as I was separating, they was tending to shrivel up slightly. That's how fast they can in fact dry up. Now, if you let it go too far, you will lose your eggs. They can only dry up maybe 5-10%. So I was within my limits doing that video, but bearing in mind, the essence, in case I haven't made the point clear already, is that when it comes to eggs, you got to move quick, you got to move fast, because you can lose them very easily. As I said, these lot appear to be perfect with the exception of egg number 13 down there. The rest of them appear to be perfect, and it should be a trouble-free incubation from here on in. I will keep my eyes on the container fairly regularly for the next day or so, and there should in theory be no need for me to move the eggs at all. Now, what I will probably do as a matter of protocol to make sure we have perfect results, I will probably lift the eggs out and check them underneath to make sure there's no moulds and funguses. I think I mentioned fungus or something before. It's more likely mould is the problem. They are often associated together, but as a correction, I suppose I should say mould rather than fungus. All these various pathogens can cause problems, but in the real world of incubating eggs, it is rarely a problem. But with the brown snakes, I don't think I've had issues with brown snakes in recent years with mould issues, but I have had some eggs, and I can't remember what snakes they were from, where I had some mould attack 2 or 3, and I was able to treat it with betadine and salty water, washing the surface and so on, and we kept it in check, and the eggs did in fact hatch. Now, basically the point is, the best thing to do for eggs is basically to leave them alone and don't do anything. The advantage of writing the lines across the top as I've done is if you do have cause to move them, you can put them back in the same polarity and they will hatch. If eggs are rolled during incubation, certainly after, you got a little window shortly after the time of laying, generally regarded by most people as being a couple of days. Beyond that, if the eggs are rolled, they generally do not hatch. So the aim is to have them hatch. Now, as you've seen with these ones, one of the 12 here, has in fact been rolled. It was re-rolled, orientated from where I took the position. One assumes it will be okay. I assume we're within that window. We're on a borderline case by conventional wisdom, but when I have re-rolled eggs that are not on polarity, they have always hatched. The general perception is if they sit on North Pole, that's better. Eggs are usually laid on pole because they sit in the oviducts, I think that's the correct word, but they sit inside the snake at the right level, and they are passed out of the snake onto the ground slowly. They are sticky, they stick to whatever they land on, which is either the ground or another egg, and they are in fact usually North Pole, and unless they are rolled, which doesn't happen very often, they're laid North Pole. The question is, do the rolled eggs incubate properly or not? That's a good one that I cannot answer. The general belief is sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. When you get to eggs shortly after being laid, if they are rolled, I am of the belief that if you roll them back, they will incubate considerably better. As I said, these eggs are now good, they're fine, they're in the incubator. Normally we would be a bit quicker, but look, having said that, the way they were joined up together, I was pretty much stuffed. I did have to break them apart, and in the dry air environment, yes, they will tend to shrivel. And that's why you operate really fast with eggs, because you do not want to lose them. Looking at them here, in this container. They all look absolutely magnificent. As you can see, some were washed under a tap, some were just dried. There is bits of vermiculite sticking to the eggs. That's all fine. They are absolutely beautiful, and they should hatch. As I said, if I'd done nothing and left them in the cage, in a warmish room, in a humid room, they may well have survived. But I will say this way is almost idiot-proof. They're in the incubator, which I've explained already, and yeah, basically they should sit there for a while and hatch. In fact, I'll check the probe in there. It'll probably say 30. I won't check the probe, take too long. It'll probably say about 30 degrees. The room temperature was 30 degrees today, and it does go up and down a bit. It fluctuates, but we have thermometers and air cons and stuff within the room, so they can't overheat. But if the room temperature were to exceed the temperature on the thermostats in the incubator here, because it's a fridge sort of device, it's doubtful the temperature would rise very much, by which time it would have dropped again outside and we're going back to square one. I must say, normally with the maximum thermometers, if I place them in a box like this, it is so stable it barely moves a single degree. Normally the range of fluctuation in the incubator itself is a couple of degrees between the on and off periods, but bear in mind this is in a container within a container. Generally speaking, the temperature just does not fluctuate at all. Absolutely amazing. Vastly superior to the old style incubators with light bulbs and wood boxes, and I must say they do work. I used to incubate all my eggs in the old style wood box type incubators, but I must say the modified fridge is way better. And having said that, if you can get one with a glass door like a bar fridge as opposed to this, it would in fact be better. I also prefer the larger fridges, which are not necessarily wasteful because they are so cheap to run no matter how big the things are. I like a big, sort of thing like a soft drink fridge. That's the go. Anyway, they're all good, and as I said, it is very idiot-proof incubating eggs, and these videos have been made so that other people, when they do get eggs from their snakes, will hatch them properly. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned also is the vermiculite. This is what we call medium grade vermiculite. For incubation purposes it works well. Coarser grade is probably better, and I would not recommend finer grade because it tends to adhere to the eggs and stops the eggs breathing. When the eggs are laid in a chamber in the real world, in the wild, they are laid fairly exposed to air so they can breathe. If you have tight dirt, or alternately you have vermiculite that sticks to them too tightly, as in the fine granules, it may impact on them breathing and they may not hatch. In other words, if you're using medium grade like this or anything finer, I wouldn't use anything finer, but if you're using medium grade like this, which is what I'd call borderline vermiculite, I would be getting a rice strainer and straining it out, all the finer particles, before you use it. This was done with this vermiculite before the video, and that's why I mention it now, because I failed to mention it earlier. And the important thing is, in this series of videos, every single step that I have taken, where I've done different things, there is reason for it, and they increase the chances of the eggs hatching. If you skip any step, the eggs may hatch, but you increase your chances by following each and every step I have shown in these videos. Hopefully that'll help you. And while we're talking about incubating eggs, there's a lot of wrong information out there, so if you go elsewhere for your information, be very, very careful. There is some good information out there besides ours. We're not the sole repository of this, but please be warned, there's a lot of rubbish out there. In terms of people with expertise, just remember, get the proof before you take their advice. If a person has no verifiable expertise spanning any sensible period, like 20 or more years, my advice is go elsewhere for your advice. And that's the same with wildlife shows in Victoria. If they haven't got 10 or 20 years expertise, verifiable in the form of published papers, even press reports from 20 years ago might tell you something. But if there's nothing except in the recent past, just assume they're new to the business and they're probably spinning rubbish to get your business. All the best.